In today's video, another tournament report, because I did 2 tournaments in 2 weeks. This is my tournament report from the Struggle at DarkSphere, episode 12 apparently. Let's get straight into it. So, the event overview, like every Shatterpoint event, it was 2-hour rounds, mission critical in the last half hour, all that good stuff. 16-player, 1-day premiere event, 4 rounds. A packed schedule, right? So it started at 11, and you can see that there's no built-in sort of gap between game 1, game 2. Then there's a break between game 2 and game 3, but that's coming at 3:30, 4 o'clock. So not a schedule planned around human lunchtime. But I'll get into that a little bit later on. Apart from that, though, you know, really good that it was starting a bit later. 11:30 meant that I could drive into London from home, left at home at 8 o'clock in the morning, got into DarkSphere at about 10:30, so that was pretty good. Yeah, you know, 4 rounds is what you want, 16 players, 1 clear winner at the end. Perfect. So, about the venue, I'm going to have a bit of a ramble before I get into the games about various things. So, I'd never been to DarkSphere before, and I'd never really been to London before. I mean, I've moved to Colchester in Essex about 11 years ago from the northwest. And I was like, oh, cool, I'll be near London, I'll pop in all the time and do things. And it just didn't, it just hasn't happened. London's weird. I mean, obviously, I've been to London to transit through London, right? Like, to go to Euston and then get the tube to Liverpool Street and then go somewhere else. And I've been to London as a kid to look at, like, the Crown Jewels and the Houses of Parliament and the Science Museum and all this stuff. But actually going into the bits of London where people actually, like, live, new experience for me. Honestly, so I used to live in the northwest. It's kind of like driving through Liverpool, except a version of Liverpool that just goes on for an extraordinarily long time. Like, you can drive for an hour. Drove from DarkSphere, like when I was going home, I drove from DarkSphere to the M11, and that was like half the journey time, and it was driving through London, which, to people that live there and are familiar with it, they're like, yeah, sure, what's the issue? But it's just, if you've never driven it, it's weird. I don't think I've ever seen so many cars, and especially driving back at night as well, I don't think I've ever seen quite so many ambulances and police cars. Like, there was I drove for an hour, and there was about 11 times that the flow of traffic was disrupted to let an emergency vehicle through going somewhere. So, yeah, just kind of a weirdly intense place with a lot of speed limits that were taking up and down a lot. I'm kind of wait to see if I get any speeding tickets, because it was quite a lot to kind of keep track of. You're trying to keep track of, I'm in the right lane and what's going on and where am I going and what's the speed limit and it's dark. So we'll see. But I think it was okay. DarkSphere's inside the W12 shopping centre. I think it is inside an old Sports Direct, is what I learned, right? So that's why the shopping centre, which is a weird space. One of the things that happened in, like, where I'm from in Liverpool, is a lot of the kind of indoor shopping centres kind of died or half died. So it's weird to me that this place, it was odd. And I'm not really talking about the shop itself. DarkSphere is lovely, but like the building, okay. So it was £25 to park. Now, granted, I was staying there a long time. £25 to park with no discounts for blue badge holders. Okay. Now, there's something called the Westfields car park, which is like a 10-minute walk away. And apparently that's like £15, so like £10 cheaper, but you've got to do a 10-minute walk. Your mileage may vary, right? I'm very lazy and crippled, so I'm probably just going to price in the fact that I have to pay £25 to park. Obviously, if you are not me and you want to get the train, that's probably going to be better for you. So consider that to be like a public service announcement. And then you get into the car park, and then you get in a lift, and then you get out the lift, and the lift opens, and you're like inside a Lidl, and it's like you're not quite in there with the food, but you're like in a sort of Lidl adjacent vestige. So it was very disorienting. So then you come out the Lidl, right, and then the entrance to DarkSphere is right there. So it's like, okay, cool. So I arrived half an hour early, and I was like, cool. Now it was open, and actually, unbeknownst to me, there was people in there playing. Were they playing Magic? Were they playing Locana? They were playing a card game, right? There was a massive card game event going on down there, and so I could have gone down and hung out and with some of the Shatterpoint people who are apparently already down there, but the event didn't start till 11, and the little sign, the little white paper sign that you see there on the sandwich board, and then again next to the lift, said it opens at 11. So I was like, okay, cool, they're down there setting up or whatever. I'm not going to go and bother. I'm going to get some coffee because I want some coffee because I've just driven for 2 hours through the M25 and through London. So I thought, surely this shopping centre has like a Costa. No, had a Wetherspoons. So you go up to the first floor, and there's a Wetherspoons. And you go into the Wetherspoons, you're like, cool, I just want a coffee. So £2, coffee from a machine, it's fine. And you can go and have, I had 2 coffees because it's free refills in the spoons. Now, had I not had breakfast, like I had breakfast at like 6 o'clock when I got up because I wanted a coffee and some cereal, and I wasn't that hungry. Could have had like a cooked breakfast if that's what I'd wanted to have, right? I've done that before when I go to Nottingham. But like it was 11 o'clock, so it wasn't like breakfast time and it wasn't like lunchtime. So got coffee, go down, right, cool. I want to talk a little bit. I promise I'll get to the tournament in a minute. I want to talk more about this Wetherspoons because it kind of boggles my mind. It's a Wetherspoons in a shopping centre. So I was like, okay, cool. This thing finishes, just to go back a slide, I'm like, oh, this thing finishes at 8. I'm going to get back home for like 10:30. So I want to have some dinner before I get in the car. I'll come back to the Wetherspoons and get some dinner at like 8 o'clock. Sure, why not? When I came back up there at 8 o'clock, the Wetherspoons was absolutely phenomenally rammed. Like, it was like a city centre Wetherspoons, but it was on the first floor of a shopping centre. So I couldn't quite work out... who wants to come out for pints in a shopping centre. I just... And this is just man visits London, doesn't understand, right? I'm sure. But, like, you understand people go out for a drink on a Saturday night, but it just wouldn't occur to me to do that in a... I don't know. It was odd. But yeah, no, it was packed out. Every table in use, and there was a doorman. But, like, again, there was a doorman not for the shopping centre, but outside the pub. So where are you throwing the people out who are rowdy in the pub too? You're throwing them out to the nice internal shopping centre space to do... I couldn't get my head around it, and it's probably just me being weird, but it was a weird place. It was also... Bear in mind, there's no toilet in DarkSphere. And I asked Louis, who's running the tournament, he's like, yeah, just go to Spoons and use the bathroom. And okay, like, fine, good. And at the point at which I needed the toilet, it was fine. But if I wanted to go after my, like, in the gap between my final round ending and, you know, the prizes, then that would have meant, like, elbowing my way through a really surprisingly rammed Spoons that was weirdly just, like, if that Spoons was on a high street, then it would just have the same vibe as all Spoons is on a Saturday night. This is my point. But it was, like, on the first floor of a shopping centre. So I was expecting it to be like the abandoned pubs that you find in train stations. Have you ever been into a train station pub? Like, there's a pub called Head of Steam in Lime Street Station in Liverpool, and it's always just empty. I thought it'd be like that. Or like an airport pub. But no, it was like a... yeah. So it's in my mind because it was a weird thing. So as it happened, what did I have for my dinner? There was a Popeye. I've never had Popeyes before. But it was like a KFC, but the same. That was fine. And then I went home, and pay my 25 quid car exit fee. Right, that's enough rambling about the W12 shopping centre, which was just a weird experience that was like culture shock plus going backwards in time to a time when shopping centres still existed. Yes. Let's talk about DarkSphere itself, because that's probably what you're actually here for. Escalators to go down. There is a lift in the picture. I have no concept of if the lift works or doesn't work. It looks fine. It looked functional. I didn't try it. If you are coming to an event in a wheelchair, I would just call them and say, hey, folks, is the lift, like, working? It is usually worth checking those things. Loads of space. Really... Sorry. As a shop, a little bit of a weird venue. They had, like... It was almost like they had the card game stuff over on one side with its own little till, and then, like, the hobby paints and stuff on one side with its own little till, and then like the snacks and drinks on a bit with it. I didn't buy anything. I bought some cans of Monster. I didn't buy any stuff. It was kind of not weirdly not set up for browsing merchandise. It was very much set up for being a place where you go and play games. You need to go to the till where they sell the food and drink and get the Wi-Fi password, because you have no mobile reception because you're in an underground bunker. And obviously you need to get on Longshanks to do your things, so make sure you do that. They were very laissez-faire about bringing food and drink in from outside, which is good. Although they did also sell drinks and like crisps and chocolate bars. So I did make an effort to buy drinks from them, even though they were probably going to be cheaper in the Sainsbury's that was in the shopping centre. And then the TO, Louis, Louis was the TO at LGT for the first day. I played him at LGT. I also played against him at Swindon. Spoilers, I also played against him at this event. You know, and I always mention it, like, as is more normal. He's just an ordinary guy. He's not being paid. He's not making a profit. He's just someone who steps up and wants to run the events, which is how it should be. He did register and play in his own tournament, and I think that's perfectly fine. But I do mention it because I know that there will be some people who would be aghast at that, right? So, he wasn't playing because there was an odd number, and he was playing to even up the numbers. He was playing because he wanted to play, because he likes to play Shatterpoint, which I think is fine. We had a game. He stepped away twice, I think, during our game to make a rules call for some other people. You know, some people will be a bit funny about that, and they'll be like, I don't want to play in a game that is one of my, like, because when Alyssa was playing at Swindon, it was like, no, you've got the buy, you've got the win. I'm just playing against you so that you have something to do for the 2 hours instead of just sitting around looking at your thumbs, right? Whereas Louis was playing, and it was actually, that was the, you know, he was playing to beat you, to place higher in the tournament. So I suppose if you're that way inclined, you could be like, well, now, for me in my game, I don't have an impartial TO if there's a question about, like, line of sight, because my opponent's the TO. But, like, if you know the guy, he's just not got those vibes, so it was fine. Like, I know that on paper it's like, oh, that's dodgy, but then, like, in reality, it's like, yeah, man, it was just fine and cool and seemed really normal. But, like, I mention it only because, like, I know for like a GT, it does say in the AMG pack that the judges can't play. So it's obviously a thing in the minds of some people out there. Really laid back guy, really cool, really genuinely has it for the love of the game. You know, it'd probably be the first person to say he, like, a little less, like, super organized, and things were like, there was one point where the rankings got a bit kind of weird because somebody entered their win the wrong way round, and then the pairings were done, and then the person that entered their win wrong corrected it, and then he decided not to redo the pairings, which is probably the right call. So the tournament got a bit kind of scuffed about a tiny bit, but I don't know. Like, I don't know how he should have handled that, because nobody wants to be told, oh, hang on, those aren't your games, pack away your stuff and move to another table. So I think he probably handled it certainly handled it in a chilled and laid back and reasonable way that I can think of a person doing a thing. So yeah, I'm great, and I had a great time, and I would definitely attend one of his events again. Right, let's get into the games. So round one, I was playing against Maya. I struggle with whether to say Maya or Maya because sidebar, I'm a teacher. There are Mayas, there are Mayas. The spelling gives you no clue, so it's like calling the register. But I'm going to go with Maya, I think. Maya was running the classic Mando list with Mandalorian, Bo-Katan, and the Clan Kreese, and then the Armorer box. And I decided to run my off list, which is Mando, Bossk with Han and Chewie, and then Cad, IG-88, and the Bounty Hunters. I did win in 2 struggles. There was a lot of luck here, right? I don't really like my Bounty Hunters list. It's very dice dependent, right? So I'll give you an example of what I mean. So and you see this in the picture as it happens. If you look at where Han and Chewie are, that's where they kind of stayed for the whole game. So Maya's first turn, she moves Clan Kreese up to claim there was an objective there originally where they're standing, right? That was the left middle objective for shifting. Clan Kreese move up onto there in her turn 1. And then in my turn 1, I had Han and Chewie, and they moved. And then we did Look Out, He's Loose to get Han up on the actual thing, up the ingress point. And then, before I did that, I paid a force to make them bounty hunters, right? I paid a force for Look Out, He's Loose. And then I attacked the Clan Kreese, and I paid another force on the second attack to actually get IG-88 dice, like 2 extra dice, and mortgage a momentum, right? Now, I managed to wound the Clan Kreese with that, which means that I got my 3 force back, right? So once from Han and Chewie's built-in ability, we're all fine here, thank you, and then 2 from Cad Bane's thing for wounding somebody with a bounty hunter. So I gambled 3 force and got them back, and I gambled a momentum and didn't lose it, and I gained a momentum for killing, right? Now, I know that with the normal luck that I have when I play against Zimbad, if I tried that in a game against him, I just would have fluffed the dice roll, and I would ended up going, well, I had 1 activation, I've spent 3 force, I've lost my starting momentum cube, right? So now I've got 2 force for the rest of this deck. And I didn't take a point because I've gained nothing, right? So that was one of those big play, big win situations where I don't normally like lists that play that way. I just don't really have a better second list at the moment with things that I have. That said, like, the dice just smiled on me for this game. You know, this is a list that really hangs on the dice. The dice did the job. I mean, looking at the scores, I only actually got 2 wounds. It was a low wounding game. There was also a lot of positional play with Mando pushing things off and things moving things off. So I'm not going to say it was just that I had lucky dice rolls, because I can see that I only had 2 wounds. But that's certainly, that first interaction with Han and Chewie sits in my mind as being a point where I felt like I had some lucky rolls, right? But yeah, I won in 2 struggles. I think I was pretty lucky. I think Mandos, like classic Mandos, it's not an easy list to beat, but it is a straightforward list that I had practice into. It's a list Zimbad's played before. I knew what it was trying to do with its life. It was a fairly straightforward game for me for my first game, which was good. Because having won in 2 struggles, I had about half an hour, so I was able to pop outside and buy a sandwich. I got a Christmas sandwich from Sainsbury's, and then have some lunch, even though there wasn't really a lunch gap because it was getting on for sort of 12:30, 1 o'clock. Yeah. Round 2, I was playing against Mike. Now, Mike has one of the, you just got to see it in the photograph, he has one of the coolest t-shirts I've ever seen. It's like a mashup between Rogue One and Apocalypse Now, which is like the coolest film, two of my favourite films of all time. So that was good. Mike was playing the classic kind of boss Obi list, which is to say the Delta Squad box, and then Obi Rex and the Clone Commandos. And I'd flipped onto my main list, Cassian, K2, Republic Commandos with Charming Leia, Bodhi Rook, and Baze and Chirrut. Now, this is a matchup that I am very, very familiar with. You know, this is the list that's this is like Helen's main list is Boss Obi. This is the list that I played into Stephen at the LGT with. It's a list that I play into a lot, so I know exactly kind of what it does. It does a lot. It's a powerful list. I know and had learned, especially from my game with Steve, not to shoot random things that I didn't have much of a chance of doing anything, so they couldn't drop their hunkers and dash onto things. So I knew what I was doing. Mike, clearly a really highly skilled player, right, knew what he was doing as well. And I'm going to be very, very honest, I won the game on luck. You know, my last turn, the double, the priority point was exactly the point it needed to be, right? I drew Shatterpoint, was able to go Shatterpoint with Baze and Chirrut. I was able to move them on to the double point where Fixer was, right? And I, you know, moved them along and was able to, roll a shed load of dice, as Baze and Chirrut do with Cassian in the list, and to flop Fixer off the point. They didn't get the wound, but they didn't need to, because I scored 3, and then mission critical, right? And if I hadn't won the struggle that turn, you know, he would have mission criticaled, and he would have, he'd have been looking at scoring. He would have had to score 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or, well, he can't score 5, but score 4, do a wound. He would have taken the struggle. The way he was playing, it was very likely that he could have found a way to score the board and do a wound. So, yeah, it was a real close game. And like I say, if the priority point hadn't ended up just where it needed to be, if I hadn't drawn my Shatterpoint when I needed it, it wouldn't have quite gone the same way. High wounding game for me as well. We both did 6 wounds, which I think was big. He didn't, as Boss often doesn't, Mike didn't try and play around the Cassian revenge so much as just kind of eat it and be like, yeah, I'm going to try and wound you so fast and so hard that you're just shuffling corpses. And it almost worked for him. But I managed to win that 2-1. I was really, really pleased with that because that was a tough old game. I want to talk about the terrain a little bit. So you can see in the picture, terrain for this table is a bit odd. It's not really Shatterpoint terrain. You know, we had that, like a massive, if you can see my cursor, there's like a massive flight of stairs here, which we decided was an ingress point, which was pretty advantageous to me because this is my side of the table, and there was a certain point an objective up here. We decided that this lip wasn't really a thing, so you could shove people over, so as if the lip was smooth. Now the terrain, Louis was telling me that basically, usually a lot of the London regulars come and they bring their own terrain, and he didn't have as many of his regulars, so therefore he was scrabbling around for terrain. Like, you know, I could have chucked a box terrain in the car. Louis, I'm just saying, there are ways around this. Just more broadly, there is a whole limit in the system for Shatterpoint events, which is terrain, and this is something that because I talked to the guy at Norwich, because they have the space there at Athena where they could run a GT, right? They could get a huge number of tables in there because they got a lot of space. But there's just not that many sets of terrain. Now, one thing that Jed does, the TO up in Element Games in the Northwest, is he gives like a £5 discount for people that bring a terrain set. So on the ticket price, you just knock £5 off for someone that says, yeah, I can bring a table's worth of terrain. And another thing I've seen back when I played a lot of Kill Team in the Kill Team community, they used to be like, yeah, if people want to bring terrain, that's great, let them know. And then there'll be a competition at the end, like players vote for the best painted table of terrain, and the best painted table of terrain is eligible to win, you know, some kind of prize voucher or whatever it is another way of doing it. So there's a way, or you could just ask, right? But there are ways to incentivize the people who are coming to your event. Most people who are coming to one of these events probably have a table of Shatterpoint terrain. You know, let me think. I've got the Corsair, I've got High Ground, I've got Take Cover, and I've got the Garage. Probably you can do 2 tables with that. And I don't mind chucking one of these. Can't see it, it's off the screen, but like just one of these Kallax drawers in the back of the car. You know. But yeah, it was fine. It's for as long as you discuss it with your opponent, which, you know, it's fine. It wasn't quite 110% ideal. Yeah. Let's move on. Round 3. So round 3, I had to play Louis. I said it would happen, and Louis was in fact the one who stopped my runs. I was on 2 wins, and Louis forced me to a loss. I did take a struggle off him though, so I was pretty pleased about that. Right. Louis is haunting me. LGT, fought Louis, lost. Swindon, fought Louis, lost. And now DarkSphere, fought Louis, lost. Louis was running a really interesting list. So he really loves Jin, and every game I played against him, he's been running Jin with a different list, because he's playing around trying to find a Jin list that I think is his absolute favourite. For this, he was running Jin with Sabine and the Clan Kreese, and then the Armourer box. So the first 2 games I played in, I looked at the lists and I was like, oh yeah, this list, I get it. This game was the first one where I looked at it like, oh, you've brewed something here. Okay, you've made something interesting and weird and I have to think about it, right? Louis is very good with Jin. He sees her play lines and what she can do and when to dash her and when to get a 5 dice. And he doesn't, when I've been playing Jin, I always get really hung up on, well, you've got to take somebody like Hero Luke or Boosh with her so that she can try and get repoed, so she can get a 5 dice and then an attack off on her first activation. And Louis is just like, yeah, no, fine, I'm going to dash with her at first, that's not a problem. So that was interesting to see. Louis is a great player of the fundamentals of Shatterpoint. So if he goes up an ingress point, he positions really well so that you're not placing a figure up that ingress point, which with the standard sort of AMG terrain is actually really easy to do. You just, unless you have, if you have a ladder that's coming up, as we didn't have, if you have a ladder that's coming up kind of in the middle of a terrain piece, it's a bit harder to do. So like here, on this piece of terrain, you can't really block this ladder because somebody can go up and go like here, and somebody can go up and they can kind of get like up here. So it's a lot harder to block off with a single figure. But like here, pretty easy to block this ladder. You just go up and you go to your left as far as you can, leaving like not a base's width between the right edge of your base and the edge of the platform. And then here, pretty easy to block the ladder as well, because you can sort of place a miniature such that you just don't have enough space on this bit, and then they're also slightly forwards as well, to try and stop them having anywhere to place like there as well. So you can block those. So that's the ladder that's molded onto this building here. So you can block those off reasonably effectively, and force people to use climbs if they want to get up onto the thing, which is something he does without thinking about it, and that I like. There was at least once, maybe twice in the game where I could have blocked a ladder, but I just didn't. Yeah. He also knows my list inside and out. So Louis is a massive Rebels player, and he's played around with all the bits of Rebels tech. So he was extremely proficient at. He would go for a wound, and there weren't that many wounds. He did 2 wounds, but each time he went for a wound, it was extremely calculated in terms of he just knew, I'm going to go for this wound, and he would kind of mentally be like, and K2 can't, you know, this, Leia, this, and then Cassian move this. Like, the 2 times he chose to wound, like, he'd already sussed it all out. And so I would look down at my board and go, great revenge, and I'd be like, you know, there's not really anything I can super do. There'd be some things I could do, like, I can repo someone with Cassian to put them somewhere setting up for the next struggle or setting up for something to do next time. Like, not nothing, but there was never a point where I got to use a revenge trigger and go, cool, I just scuttle over onto that point, or cool, I just scuttle over there and do this, and knock this down with K2 or whatever it was. I just wasn't allowed to do that. Because I think Louis probably could play my list better than I play it, right? So the other thing I thought that really impressed me and stood out in my mind was his use of the Clan Kree's Mandalorians. They have a pin on one. So he had an activation with them where he just shot 2 different of my units, because if he doesn't want to wound me, shot 2 different things of mine. One was K2, one, I forget, was something else. Could have been PLC, could have been something, but he was just able to, like, pin and pin, and just throwing out the pins. There was a point where I was like, oh yeah, I can do this and this and this, and then I looked down at my cards and accept K2's pins, so that none of that's happening, right? And he's like, yep, that's why I did it. And I'm and people, and so it was a really powerful lesson in how to beat myself, I think. I don't think I'm ever going to beat Louis with this list. Doesn't mean that I'm going to change my list or try and tailor it to something else, because obviously you can't keep drawing the same guy in every event you go to. But he knows how to play this kind of Rebel Revenge list so well that it was very difficult for me to get very much traction. That said, I did take a struggle, so I shouldn't be so hard on myself, right? Because yes, it was a loss, but it was a 2-1 loss, and that one struggle does count for your tournament point thing, doesn't it? So, good. And then into round 4. So round 4 was playing Matty. I played Matty before, played Matty at the LGT. He's a great bloke. He's a little bit softly spoken and / I'm a little bit deaf. I don't know which it is, so I was constantly trying to, like, lean across and be like, what are you saying there, mate? But he's a great bloke, really friendly, really chill guy. He was running Fulcrum, Ezra and Chopper, Kanan, Sabine, Commandos. So a pretty common list. Matty really loves Ahsoka and really wants Fulcrum to work. And I do admire that, right? He really wants Fulcrum to get work in and do stuff. I wasn't that impressed with Fulcrum. I never am. I don't think she's quite got the juice, right? I played a very cagey game because I knew, I know how to play around Kanan and Rebels, because, just like I was saying about Louis in round 3, I've got the Rebels boxes. I've played Rebels a fair bit. I know how they work. So I bullied. I did 3 wounds. 2 of them were on the Rebel Commandos because they don't have the Spectre tags, so you just kill them. And then once was on Ezra, because I knew that I'd shoved Kanan twice back into something, so he might have got the only things he could jump and attack weren't gonna. He wasn't gonna get a wound reciprocally. So I think that was the mismatch, right? Whereas I think he was trying to do, if I'm being gracious, I think he was trying to do the kind of boss strategy where you just go cooler revenge list. I'm just gonna wound it. And I'm trying to try and wound it so hard that you're shuffling corpses. But even though he did 7 wounds across the game, he just didn't do them fast enough or on the right things, so that I couldn't just kind of shuffle things back onto points. There was definitely a point where he wounded something over somewhere else, and I'm like, cool, now I'm going to put K2 over on that point. So I felt like he... And that's not to say he just kind of did let me revenge all the time, because there was a lot of the time where he clearly had seen it and thought about it and was going like, well, there was one play where he's like, cool, well, I've got this point here, and then I'm gonna move, like, K2 was on a back point, and then he took the point in front of it, and K2 could easily have just repoed onto that front point and keep it for me, but he moved Sabine to check the back point, which meant that if I moved K2 to keep the midline point, he would have flipped onto the back point, right? Which I did actually do, because I figured having K2 locking down the midline point was possibly better, because there were other things nearer to that back point that hadn't gone yet, like Cassian still sitting in the deployment zone. that I felt I could get the back point back later if I had to pick one to lose. So he did know how to play around the revenge, but I think also round 4, tired, right? And so he did just start to miss stuff. So I think that's why I was able to get the two struggle win. Both struggles were like, I got into an early lead in both of them, and then he really made me pay. And I really kind of, when it was one of those things where it was constantly bouncing up in my half, and he's ticking up the momentum from the pity cubes that you get for not pulling it back onto your half, and making me sweat and making me really work for the wins. But I did manage to get them, so that was good. Yeah, and it's like I say, he just missed a few of the revenge triggers, and I do think there are better choices. I think Jin would have been a better choice over Fulcrum or PLC. I love PLC in that list, but he loves Fulcrum and wants to try and make it work, so I get it, and it's cool to be like, no, I really want to make this character work, right? It's a good job I don't have any Empire, because if I played Empire, it would just be like, cool, what can we try and do? Because I love Rogue One so much, so be like, what can we try and do with Krennic? And Krennic's awful, so I understand the mentality. It just I'm lucky in that one of my favourite characters in Star Wars is also S tier and ridiculous, right? In the form of Cassian, so that's a good thing. But it's fortunate for me that I went into Rebels as my second faction rather than going into Empire, purely as a function of the fact that my good friend Oro already plays all the Empire guys, right? And there we are, final placing. I came 4th, so that's like my best placing in any tournament ever, including all the kill teams I did, anything. This is the single best result I've ever had from any competitive game that I've ever played in. Really sadly. So if this had been a game that was using one of the league kits, they have prizes for top 4. You get a card embossed with top 4. So 4 would have been podium. For the kit we were using, the so-called tournament kit, the extra bonus prizes, like there's like an art card for the winner, and then there's like 3 red Shatterpoint dice for top 3. So I just missed out on this sort of podium section, right, which sucks a little bit. But yeah, it's one of those things. And you look at it, you're like, cool. So there was 1, 2, 3, 4 of us on 3 and 1. And I was kind of 3rd out of 4 of the people who are on 3 and 1. And so then you look at like, okay, so we're on 3 and 1. All of us who are on 3 and 1, had 9 tournament points. So that means then that all of us who are on 3, who are on that score, won a struggle in the game that we lost. Right? I think that's what that means, if I'm reading Longshanks correctly. And so then the next tiebreaker down then is am I right? Yes. So then the next hang on. No. The tournament points is 3 points for a win, isn't it? So that's the 9. And then it's the VPS that's the number of struggles, right? Yes. So I'm right. We all had VPS 7, which means that we'd all taken a struggle in our loss. So that was tied, right? So then it goes down to strength of schedule. So Alex had a worse strength of schedule than the other 3, right? Am I reading that right? Yes. So we're all on 1.5. That is to say, Louis, Mike, and myself all on 1.5. Now, strength of schedule, right? You don't control strength of schedule. It's random. I'm not going to whine about it, but I played Maya in my first round, and she dropped. Had she stayed, and I don't quite know how strength of schedule works, but I think had she stayed and like won and gone 2 and 2, then that might have bumped me up to 2nd place. Is that how that works? And again, you can't control these things. People get sick, people have to go home, stuff happens. I get it. Strength of schedule's kind of annoying. And then you go to wounds. So this is the thing that I could control and try and do more about. And the reason effectively that I came 4th and not 2nd or 3rd, Louis had 18 wounds, Mike had 17 wounds, and I only had 14 wounds, right? So I would have been three. I would have been 3 wounds away from being tied for 3rd place. And then I don't know what you do. Do you do a priority roll to determine who's in 3rd place? I don't quite know how that works. So I need to get better at scoring wounds. Now, things that I need to do. Obviously, it's going to depend what you draw as your opponent. You know, if you happen to have to play into a lot of revenge lists, you're going to do less wounds. Like, if my last game hadn't been into Kanan and it had been to something else, maybe I would have felt able to do more wounds, right? So you can't control that. Certain things that I could do, though, I'm not always the best. If I get a last activation where I've won, as happened in 2 of my games, where you look at it and you go, cool, I roll the priority point, cool, I'm going to score 3, that's going to mean that I win. I'm not always good at going, right, I flip that card and I try and think really hard about how to get a wound. Like, I know in my game against Matty, I didn't really think about it. I just looked at the board and went, you know, I'm fried, I've won the game, I'm really worried that if I wound something just to get the point for wounding, you're then going to get a Kanan revenge trigger that I haven't seen, and I'm going to, like, not get the point, right? And in fact, it was the same in the game against Mike. He wasn't playing a revenge list, but it was an Obi list, right? It's like, oh, am I going to try and wound something? And then you're going to discard a hunker and dash onto a point that I haven't seen. Like, I could have thought about that a bit harder, but because you don't want to, like, you don't want to jeopardize the win, and you're like, yeah, I've won, and also it feels, I feel bad about sitting there and going, right, I've won the game, but you're just gonna have to sit there for a minute while I ponder to see if there's a safe wound that I can get to pad my like 3rd tiebreaker. And the other thing that I could do that I never do, I did this once at LGT. Like, I don't mind doing it when I've lost, but when I win, technically speaking, if you're playing Cassian, you can use this town's ready to blow at the end of the final struggle, purely to see if you can catch anybody who's on, you know, 1, 2, 3 health points left and on an active objective. And in theory, like, doing that consistently over the 4 rounds, that could have been the difference between 4th place and 3rd place. You know, potentially. And I never do it because it feels awful. It feels rude to me to do it. But I think if having seen this now, where actually, yeah, you know, the handful of wounds might have made a difference between walking away with the 3 red dice or not, I need to be a bit more politely ruthless about saying, oh, just before we pack up, I'm just going to do this town's ready to blow to see if I can get an extra wound, right? People will be fine with it, mostly. It just feels bad. It feels like kicking a puppy. If you've won and you're like, oh, by the way, I'm just going to do this thing to see if I can win a bit harder. Let me know in the comments what you think about that. Right, prizes. So it was the same prize pack as Swindon. So I got 2nd copies of all this stuff. So the Kiadi Mundi is going to Zimbad. I already had a Director Krennic card put away for Oro, who I play on TTS, but he's also going to get the Krennic Shatterpoint foil. The first one I kept for myself, but the second one, he says he'd like that, so that's fine. I'm waiting to hear from Blue, who's the other person in my little playgroup that I actually physically play sometimes, whether they would like the Jin and Andor foils. And then depending on that, I'm then going to offer my spare Krennic and or, when Blue responds to my DMs, the Jin and the Andor to people in my Discord's members room. Just for the price of postage. I don't agree with selling this stuff, but I will give it away, potentially. So if you are a channel member and you want the foil Krennic character card, just it'll be first come, first serve. I also got a poster. So Louis did a really interesting thing. The poster, that isn't actually a physical picture of my poster. The poster is here because taking a picture of the poster, like trying to stretch it out in my hands and weight it down with paperweight, would suck. But I found online it is that. I don't know why I feel to prove it to you, but I have now. It is that poster, which I think is amazing. Like I say, Rogue One is certainly my favourite Star Wars film. Out of all the films, big fan. So this room is absolutely covered in art. So this is probably going to go to work. It's going to go to my office. I'm going to put it up somewhere in my office with some blue tack that's technically the property of the state, right? To pin up my Rogue One poster where it will improve my work efficacy, I'm sure. You know, not in my classroom, but I'll put it in my office, and that'd be cool. So yeah, basically there was a prize table, and so the one benefit I got from coming fourth was if you came in the top 3 and you took your red dice, that counted as like your thing from the prize table. So I was the first person to get first dibs on the other things that weren't the red dice, right? Now, technically, one of the way that Louis ran it, technically one of the people who had come in the top 3 could have been like, I don't want my 3 red dice, I'm going to take this poster, but nobody did that. But I'm actually quite pleased with my poster that I got for coming fourth. So, like, I don't know if other people would have taken it, right? But I think it's really cool. So there you go. That's good. Right, final thoughts. Were you at the event? Share your thoughts down below. Always like to hear from my opponents, especially if they feel like I did them dirty and they were like, no, man, you just won because of luck, because I'm amazing. That's fair. The next event that I'm booked in and going to is at Athena Games in Norwich on the 25th of January. That is just a showdown event, 3-round showdown, so I will just take my Andor PLC list to that and try and do my absolute very best to replicate my success that I've had here. I know that there is a event at Element Games before then in January that has like 1 or 2 tickets left. The only reason that I'm not going to that one is because it's like I will have just been up north for Christmas and then I'll be back down south for a week and then I'll be like, and then it was like, oh, do you want to come back up north with it? It's not fair to my daughter to like all that. She doesn't really like traveling, so it's not that fair to her to go back up to her grandmother's house that quickly after having been at grandma's, right? But have a look on the Discord, in the UK Shatterpoint Discord, if you want to have a look at Athena. Don't post on the UK Shatterpoint Discord because they suck. If you want to know when the next Athena Games event is, you're actually better off joining my Discord because Bennis posts them in there. If you want to know about the Element event in January, if you join the UK Shatterpoint Discord, he has a thread in there that he keeps updated. Do subscribe, comment, like, etc. And like I say, consider joining my Discord, join the UK Shatterpoint Discord, join all the Discords, right? I want to say a big thank you to my channel members who keep all these things going and make it possible for me to spend £25 parking my car. And I also want to say a particular thanks to Alex McKinley, who donates quite a lot to the Unreasonable London Car Parking Fund. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I will see you again next week when I will have to come up with something to talk about that isn't a tournament report, but we'll get there. We'll get there when we get there, and there should be, as per usual, a live stream on Tuesday, hobby stream, so look forward to that as well. I'll see you then. Cheery, cheery, bye. Bye-bye, 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 bye.